Channel Joliet.
Chicagoland. Here come your better Buick dealers with 2 more reasons why they sell more Buicks than anyone else in the country.
Many of those were on this ill-fated trip who have been released.
All of the Dempseys were here to pray at the Mass. They are a close-knit religious family. Sally is a nun. Dick is a priest. They told me in some ways that makes this a bit easier because they know where to turn to for hope. In St. Charles, Diane Burns, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Security meeting terrorist demands.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
It is hardly strange that following a week during which hundreds have died and dozens have been hijacked, that people should be raising serious questions about airport and airline security. But a few words of caution before we get too caught up in the hysteria of it all. For all that has happened during the past few days, flying by commercial airliner is still infinitely safer than driving on America's highways. For all that has happened, these are still just a handful of terrible incidents amid tens of thousands of trouble-free flights every day. That needs to be said because already there are those who argue that to avoid these incidents, we need to re-examine and possibly change our entire foreign policy. But let's begin with what has happened and what can be done about it. Here's Nightline correspondent Jed Duval.
The Middle East, Frankfurt, Tokyo, off the coast of Ireland. Suddenly, international aviation looked horrible. The explosion of bombs, first in Frankfurt and then in Tokyo, came days after a spate of hijackings in the Mediterranean area. Then, the loss of the Air India plane with 329 aboard, which may have been caused by a bomb. How much should you worry about air travel? Jerry Jerome is a consultant on airplane and airport security.
These bombing threats are aberrations. There are millions and millions of people who fly airlines each day without any problem at all.
Jerry Jerome may convince you, but he hasn't convinced Mrs. Jerome.
My wife canceled a trip to Honduras and possibly one to California next September.
Because of this?
Because of this.
Indeed, air travel remains safe. Millions will still move uneventfully to their destinations. Airlines operating in the United States carry 1 million persons each day on 15,000 flights, more than 500 of them to cities overseas. But there is much that airlines and governments can do to improve. According to Rodney Wallace, Chief of Security for IATA, the International Air Transport Association.
I think there's a lot of action that could be taken to minimize the risk of hijackings, and that action rests on the shoulders of governments.
Across much of the Western world today, following the Air India disaster, authorities reacted at Heathrow in London, in Paris, in Rome, and Stockholm and Helsinki and many other airports. Police told of adding guards or overhauling security. The places where overhaul is most needed, according to the publishing firm Business International, are these: Athens, Beirut, Manila, New Delhi, Tehran, and Tripoli. The list may be handy and in some cases obvious, but the terrorist doesn't necessarily work with that guide. IRA gunmen, Sikh Avengers, Palestinians, Armenians, Shiites, and others gunning for some group or some cause have the world to shoot at. The Air India plane took off from Toronto. Is it possible to achieve complete security at the airports and in the planes? A state of zero worry? Physically, it may be possible, but the cost would be enormous.
The cost will be in terms of time, delays, and extra staff, and I would say as much as 30 to 50% more.
Should that be done? Check every bag?
If you have the threat, absolutely.
If every bag was checked, that would do it. Or would it? Here's the spokesman for Air India, interviewed today.
All baggage is checked, both the checked baggage, which is unusual for most airlines, but we check that as X-rayed or with a handheld device. And naturally, all passenger baggage, that is carry-on baggage, is checked.
Air India claims it has been very cautious because of recent threats and was more thorough than most airlines are. But Canadian officials reported that Air India's scanners broke down, and a quarter of the bags on the lost plane were examined with hand scanners. Jed Duval for Nightline from Washington.
Later in this broadcast, we'll look at some of the more radical issues related to terrorism as we talk with Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Benjamin Netanyahu, and with former Senator James Abourezk of South Dakota, who now heads an Arab-American lobbying group. But first, when we return, we'll focus on airline security as we talk with Captain Henry Duffy, chairman of the Airline Pilots Association.
Last year in the United States, more than 775 million people were screened by airport security devices, resulting in the confiscation of nearly 6,000 firearms, 6 explosive or incendiary devices, and in the arrests of more than 1,200 people. This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by MasterCard.
MasterCard, find me a bargain. Something in blue. MasterCard, you're so chic.
Into every life a little rain must fall. And when that happens, Ford Tempo's forward thinking really shines. It has front-wheel drive traction, precise handling, and a shape that actually helps Tempo hug the road. You might also like to think of Tempo as a nice, cozy place to come in out of the rain. Have you driven the best-built American cars? Have you driven a Ford lately?
Catch the rays, feel the heat, breeze on out to the summer beach, turn it loose with the silver bullet. All you have to do is pull it, grab a hold of a cold Coors Light. The flavor's heavy, the weight is right. The silver bullet won't slow you down. Feel the beat, keep it light, party right. Turn it loose with the silver bullet tonight.
Coors Light beer.
It's here. New no-nonsense. The first pantyhose with 16-point contouring fits you even better than before. Shapes itself perfectly from your ankle all the way to your waist. Now no-nonsense outdoes its own reputation for fit with new 16-point contouring. It fits you even better than before.
And that's no-nonsense.
All day, all night, ABC News stands ready. And tomorrow, is U.S. intelligence too high-tech to be effective? On ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Joining us live now in our Washington Bureau, Captain Henry Duffy, president of the Airline Pilots Association, which represents some 34,000 U.S. airline pilots. Who's got the safest airport in the world and why?
Well, Ted, we think all the airports are safe enough to stand the commercial flights that we're putting into them now. That list that I just saw a little earlier is a list that we don't like to bandy about because it becomes kind of a checklist for people that would take us on from a security point of view.
Yeah, but I'm asking you to take it on from the other point of view. Who has the best? Maybe you don't want to give just one, maybe you want to give 3 or 4, but I'd like to know why. What is it that makes a secure airport?
Well, what makes a secure airport is screening on both the ground side and the air side of the airport that absolutely seals off the airplane to the introduction of anything harmful either into the cabin or into the baggage bin.
So that, for example, when people can check their bags at curbside, that creates a problem, doesn't it?
It creates a problem, but that's a problem that can be handled, and I think you're going to see a dramatically increased level of security on checked baggage, because we do have methods of looking at that, both through manual hand checks and through, of course, bomb-sniffing dogs.
All right, but at this time of year, Captain Duffy, when we have literally hundreds of thousands of passengers every single day, and the load of passengers and their baggage is so enormous, would it be unfair to say that things get a little laxer or that they try to kind of push things through a little faster than they might at lighter periods?
Well, Ted, I think it's more a result of what level of hijackings that we've been seeing. I think as soon as you start to see the kind of things that have been going on the last couple of weeks, the level of security is going to jump. It may cause some inconvenience at some airports, but we think the traveling public will understand that.
All right, and yet, when one looks at what happened, for example, at Athens Airport with that TWA aircraft, there is good reason to believe now that it wasn't lax security at Athens Airport, but an inside job in which someone planted those weapons in the toilets before the passengers ever boarded. How do you guard against that when it's an inside job?
We consider that lax security. If the proper background checks were not done on the people servicing the airplane, that's part of the normal checklist procedures that should have been accomplished at that airport, and it is one of our complaints against the Greek government.
All right, what is it, if you had to name 3 or 4 things that you would like to see changed immediately, what would you want changed?
At the Athens airport?
At any airport.
Well, first of all, absolutely tight screening of passengers and hand carried on luggage, and I mean no just pass-through procedures, a lot more physical checking. For the checked baggage itself, I think...
Let me stop you right there, because that takes time, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It means the people are going to have to stand in lines a little bit longer, and we're going to ask the traveling public to understand it, because the type of violence we've been seeing is something that the traveling public isn't going to stand for very long, and we'd rather have them bear the inconvenience of standing in line than bear the inconvenience of a hijacking or certainly a bombing.
Put a time on it. I mean, I know, for example, I've gone through Israeli security a number of times in Israel, where they will tell you got to be there 2 or 3 hours ahead of flight time, and they mean it.
Well, and I think what you're going to see here is we're going to be cranking up these procedures until we put a stop to it. We don't want the public to have to bear any more security procedures that are necessary to seal the airplanes off, but we're going to keep cranking up the level until we've reached escalated it to the level where there is no more introduction of bombs or hijackers onto the airplane.
All right, I stopped you on your list. Briefly, if you would, the other 2 or 3 items.
Well, we do need to go to the baggage bins themselves, and we've got to introduce more mechanisms, more hand checks, where we look at every single bag. We do have the bomb-sniffing dogs. We've got to bring those out. We just haven't been using them because we haven't been encountering that type of problem.
All right, Captain Duffy, if you'd be good enough to hang in with us, I appreciate very much you joining us this evening. Thank you. When we come back, we'll look at some of the more radical issues raised by airline terrorist attacks as we talk with Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli ambassador to the United Nations and an expert on counterterrorism, and with former U.S. Senator James Abourezk of South Dakota, who now heads the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee.
Comfort's coming.
Gonna be a sizzler. I'm gonna make some folks real happy today.
Comfort's coming.
And I'm happy that this air conditioner's up to 40% more energy efficient than the one it replaces.
Comfort's coming.
Saving energy while you're cooling off. How could you beat that?
Comfort's coming from Train.
Train air conditioning. 50 million people take comfort in it.
For over 30 years, Tupperware has revolutionized food storage. Now we've revolutionized food preparation.
Tupperware, now you're cooking?
Introducing Ultra 21 Ovenware.
Tupperware, now you're cooking.
A unique new material lets you freeze, microwave, and even bake at high temperatures.
Tupperware. Now you're cooking.
Ultra 21. It's guaranteed for life.
Tupperware, now you're cooking.
Call us for a free demonstration.
Don't you just hate to be without your glasses? Never again. At Precision Lens Crafters, we custom grind glasses in about an hour, even bifocals. Listen.
I stepped in my glasses, they were shattered, and they were completely useless to me. So I came here, they were able to fit me up with a new pair of glasses. I was in and out in an hour.
You get your glasses within an hour.
I bought 2 pair of glasses, and they were both done in less than an hour.
Eyeglasses in about an hour. Precision Lens Crafters, 6 locations. Call 691-2100 for the location near you.
Where are you going today? How will you get there? Take the RTA.
It's never slow going, in the no going. It's easy going every day, cause the RTA is going the way you want to go. The RTA is going your way. Go to the zoo, go to what's new, go to work or play. Go for it all, and set your sights tall. The RTA is going the way you want to go.
You won't have to go through what you think to get a great value on a new Pontiac.
Pretend that this is the salesman, this is the price.
You can do better than that.
Harry,
You can do better than that.
he's laughing at you.
You can do better than that!
You won't have to haggle. After you get a great price, get air conditioning worth $750 at no extra charge on a Grand Prix, Bonneville, or Parisienne at your Chicagoland and Northwestern Indiana Pontiac dealers.
We can't do better than that.
Joining us now live in our New York bureau is Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations and editor of the book International Terrorism, Challenge and Response. And joining us here in our Washington bureau, former U.S. Senator James Abourezk of South Dakota, chairman and founder of the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, an Arab American service organization. Senator Abourezk, is there anything politically that can be done to reduce the level of terrorism?
Well, I think that what the United States ought to do is to take a look at its long-term foreign policies. For example, what I think we're seeing now is a consequence of years of foreign policy of tilting toward Israel, of giving Israel carte blanche, writing a blank check for them, and an increasing buildup of anti-American resentment as a result of that throughout the Middle East. I think you have to understand that there was no real anti-American terrorism by Arab peoples up until last year. And this is an increasing thing that's going on. And the people who make policy here in Washington, in the Middle East, don't really pay the price. Who pays the price are the Marines who come back and are buried in Arlington Cemetery, the innocent victims on the TWA flight. Those are the people who had no part in policymaking, but yet bear the burden of the policies made in Washington.
Ambassador Netanyahu, I hardly expect you to agree, but let's see what basis your disagreement takes.
Well, the basis is fact. In 1980, the entire world watches the Iranians held up the 50 hostages in Tehran. That was not a year ago. In 1976...
No, but neither are the Iranians Arabs.
No, they're not, but they're part of the Islamic Arab culture, which we're dealing with. Let's talk about Arabs then. 1976, an American ambassador was murdered in Beirut. Throughout the last decade, Americans have been the victims of Arab terror throughout the world, in many, many places. And in fact, the antipathy to the West and to America in particular precedes the establishment of the State of Israel. The Arab world, with almost no exception, joined the Nazis and collaborated with them in fighting the West and the United States in World War II.
That's not really true.
Is it not true?
No, that's not true.
What about the Palestinians? What about the Iraqis?
I think there was one Palestinian leader who joined the Nazis.
Well, no, there were many more, actually. There were the Iraqis, the Egyptians.
Gentlemen, I'll tell you what, we are drifting away, however, from the... Hold on just a second. We're drifting away from the central subject, and I'd like to bring you back to it. Senator Abourezk, if I understand you correctly, therefore, when the Armenians start bombing things because of their anti-Turkish attitude, or when the Sikhs start bombing a plane in which Americans might be killed because of their anti-Indian attitude, are you suggesting, therefore, that our foreign policy be changed in all these areas? Because surely changing it toward Israel is not going to do away with terrorism, as we've seen over these last few days.
Ted, you're not separating. What happened at the Air India flight had nothing to do with the United States, nor the bombing in Tokyo had nothing to do with the United States. What I'm talking about is there was not an American plane. It didn't take off from America. There were no real American people on there that I know of.
There were all kinds of Canadians on there. I don't know what anti-Canadian attitude anyone has over in the subcontinent.
No, but you're drifting off the subject. What we're talking about is a clear anti-American attitude that's built up, and it's been enunciated. It's because of our policy toward Israel. What Israel did was to take some 800 Lebanese hostages to protect their own withdrawal from Lebanon last year.
Well, that's
they arrested these hostages. They took them across the border.
These are not hostages.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me
as far as I know, Senator,
please
correct me if I'm wrong.
Let me finish.
Hostages, if I'm not mistaken,
please let me finish.
Just a minute. And you threaten them with their lives.
All right, Ambassador, I'll tell you what. Let's let the Senator finish, and then you'll have a chance to. Go ahead, Senator.
Okay. What they did was they took these people across the border, which President Reagan and Secretary Shultz have both said was totally illegal, which most attorneys, international lawyers, agree with that concept, and they held those people as hostages over there without charge. They've never been charged, they've never been tried, and they've never been told what they're charged with. So they're being held there. The The Lebanese have asked time and time again for these people to be released. Nobody has responded. Nobody said a word. Now, what we're seeing as in the United States, and I think sometimes the American people don't know what is going on with government policy making, but what is happening is that over the years, the Lebanese and the Arab people have built up this resentment against the total carte blanche support that we've given to Israel.
Senator, forgive me, I want to take it one subject at a time. Let's first of all use the term you just applied to those Shiites in Israel, the term hostage. Ambassador Netanyahu, any distinctions to be drawn between the Americans who are being held by the Shiites and the Shiites who are being held by the Israelis?
Of course, all the difference in the world. The detainees in Israel were not taken off an innocent airplane. They were captured in the process of attacking Israeli forces, attacking Israel proper, or were suspected of doing so. They were taken not in order to be shot. They weren't threatened with their lives, and in fact, we intend to release most of them as the conditions permit.
Why haven't they been charged with a crime if that's the case?
Senator Ambrose.
Well, Senator, let me answer you. The main point is, of course, that we took them over not contrary to any Geneva Convention, but precisely in accordance with Article 49 in Geneva Convention. Now, those who make the comparison, the invidious comparison that the Senator has just tried to make by saying that we are in alleged technical violation of the Geneva Convention, and therefore the detainees are like the hostages, are engaging in a comparison of, at best, jaywalking to murder. There is no comparison. And the hostages in Beirut should be let go, period. There is no justification of murder. There's no justification of taking innocent people, murdering them, torturing them, holding them as hostages, threatening their lives, and I'm afraid that what we're seeing here is an attempt to justify such an experience. I don't think anyone should accept it.
No, I'm not trying to justify. What I'm saying is that Israel has done the same thing to the Lebanese.
Well, what I'm trying to get to, however, what I'm trying to get to, gentlemen, is the issue of airline safety and the issue of the safety of innocent people engaged in passage from one country to another country and what they're entitled to. And if I understand you, Senator Abrams, you're suggesting that the United States, either as a direct or an indirect result of what these, and I think we all agree that terrorists are doing, should change its foreign policy. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I've been saying for years before this event ever happened that the United States ought not to make policies, the policymakers here ought not to make policies that other people will pay the price for, and that's exactly what they're doing. In fact, I want to say, Ted, I think it's an obscene concept that Israel should say that this is an American problem. After everything the United States has done for Israel, millions and billions of dollars poured over there, all kind of economic and political and military support, and they say we're washing our hands of it. This is not an Israeli problem, it's an American problem. I think Israel ought to, just out of decency, not even have to be asked to release the Lebanese hostages they're holding. And then we'll see the whole thing resolved, and I'm confident of that.
What Senator Abrams is asking us to do is to go against the American government and diametrically oppose President Reagan's wishes. What he wants us to do is, in fact, to stick to our traditional common policy, and that is not to yield to terrorism, not to make concession to terrorists under the gun. These terrorists are now making one concession, one demand. Today they made another. They said the Sixth Fleet has to move from the international waters where it is. Now they're making perhaps a third suggestion, or perhaps a third suggestion is raised today. Maybe America should change its foreign policy. In fact, they raised such demands as well. So what we're really talking about here is, does America form, or any country, and certainly a superpower, form its policies on the basis of a terrorist threat and terrorist demands? And I submit that this is totally unacceptable. We stand by the United States and its position. We are with the United States, as no other country, I think, has, simply because we've experienced exactly what the American people
Then you agree with President Reagan when he said that you illegally took the Lebanese across the border, is that
I said we have an honest difference of opinion on the question of the legality, but as I said, that's like comparing jaywalking to murder, which is what you're trying to do now, Senator.
Senator, I've known you for a long time, and indeed it is true that you've been saying for many years that the United States ought not to tilt toward Israel as much as it does. But I must ask you, sir, whether in this context, this is not an inappropriate time to raise that. Do you really think that it is proper, in the context of having quite literally a gun held to the heads of our citizens, to discuss that issue?
Well, I'm willing to discuss it any time you want to, Ted. If you don't want to do it now, let's do it after the hostages are released.
So at the moment,
I'd be more than happy to, but I think that this is a concept that we ought to discuss at any time we can, anything we can do to release these innocent people, I think, ought to be done right now. And I think the Israeli government and the U.S. government, those portions of it that are doing so, ought to quit playing games with the lives of these people and do what they can to get them released.
All right.
Why stand on this? Why stand on this thing that we're not going to give in to terror? Of course they're giving in. They released 31 of them today.
Ambassador Netanyahu, save your response, because I'm going to want to hear from you in just a moment. We'll be back with a closing comment from Ambassador Netanyahu and possibly also from Captain Duffy when we return in a moment.
You are about to see a remarkable demonstration. Here comes Fujifilm with color pictures so true to life, it's a real breakthrough. Fuji HR Films. Fuji's advanced technology has developed ultra-thin color layers unlike any other film in the world. The thinner the layers, the sharper the picture, and the truer the color. Get extraordinary Fuji high-resolution films and get the true picture. Fuji 35mm disc and 110.
Metaquick is quick medicine.
Mommy, it hurts.
Metaquick is a quick way to treat minor cuts, scrapes, and scratches.
Metaquick is quick medicine.
Metaquick works quick. Its bubbling action cleans away dirt while it kills the germs that can cause infection.
Metaquick is quick medicine.
Metaquick is quick medicine, and Metaquick stops the tears quick. Right?
Right.
Metaquick is quick medicine.
The Honda Accord four-door sedan, the standard by which other cars in this class are judged. When we made power windows, AM/FM stereo, and air conditioning standard, we made the Accord LX four-door. Then we added leather seats, fuel injection, a power moonroof, and created the Accord SEI. You see, at Honda, we keep raising the standard.
So, enjoying the chocolates you brought back from Zurich?
Not bad. But you know that diagram I said we needed next week?
By now, John, I know. You need it today. Hold on.
Using AT&T International Long Distance Service, Facsimile lets you send a bit of yourself. In minutes, quality graphics, charts, letters, or signatures can be in the hands of someone overseas.
Perfect, Hans. Now, if only it were that easy to send more Swiss chocolate.
AT&T, the right choice.
Tragedy, terrorism, Beirut. For news-breaking coverage wherever in the world it's happening, watch ABC's World News This Morning with Steve Bell and Kathleen Sullivan.
Israel's release of 31 Shiite prisoners seems to have had no effect on our hostages and our hopes for their freedom. Tomorrow, the latest from Beirut. Also, Bruce Jenner tomorrow on Good Morning America.
I'd like to go back again to Israeli Ambassador Benjamin Netanyahu. Ambassador, you heard what Jim Aberesk had to say about this notion of playing with the lives of hostages. There is that sense in some quarters. Your reaction, please.
Not at all. We're following simply the American policy, which has also been our policy, not to yield to terrorists, because surrender to terrorism breeds more terrorism and loses more lives. Let me say that the real contest in the Middle East is between the radicals and the fanatics and the terrorists against those who stand for moderation and for decency, and in the case of Israel, for democracy. And what the Arafats and the Gaddafis and the Khomeinis and the Assads of this world would like to have is precisely that America be held at a point of a gun and the lives of innocent people threatened in order for America to change its policy in the Middle East of supporting those forces that I described before. That would be a tragic capitulation to terrorism and a defeat for democracy and for America.
Captain Hank Duffy, I realize that normally you would not comment on the political aspects of something, but to the degree that they relate to airline security, do you think that we have any business talking about the politics of it?
Well, I think we have to, Ted. And, I want to reassure the traveling public, the pilots of this country and the pilots of the world are not going to allow this kind of thing to happen and not be responded to by us. We boycotted airports and we boycotted countries before. And if they don't bring their security up to acceptable levels, then we're simply not going to operate in and out of those airports.
But you're saying that this is not going to be discussed from the pilot's point of view on a political basis. You're talking about it. I mean, terrorism is something that you view separately. Is that correct?
Oh, we absolutely do.
And what then needs to be done?
The governments have got to work very strongly to disarm some of these terrorist groups. And the airplanes, as we see it, are only the stage upon which these groups operate. When they get onto our stage, however, that's our business. And we take a very strong hand in that. We're going to make sure that the security mechanisms are out there to let us control those situations.
All right, Captain Duffy, I thank you, Senator Aberesk, and Ambassador Netanyahu. ABC News will, of course, continue to cover the American hostage crisis as events dictate, with full reports on World News This Morning and Good Morning America, and on World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been Nightline, a presentation of ABC News.
Thursday, only the rich rule as kings.
What do we want with a robot factory?
Profits. And only the privileged
Two people are much warmer than one.
rule Midas Valley. Robert Stack in Midas Valley, an ABC Thursday movie.
Mercedes-Benz was building sports sedans before there was such a term as sports sedan.